Okay, good evening and welcome everybody to the Grouville Hustings, which I think is the first senatorial hustings for this current election of October the 15th, 2014, on what appears to be distinctly the first evening of autumn that we've experienced. I am Centenaire Nick Andrews, and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. There is a referendum on the position of the constables on election day, and Constable Magee is an open supporter of their retention, and he has decided that therefore he should not take this meeting. The two procurers are not available, and our chef de police is on the team of one of the candidates here this evening, so it's fallen to the next person, which is myself. There we are. Before I proceed, I have to read to you a note that's been handed to me just before the start of the meeting, and it's from Shirley Bowdans Osborne, and I'll read it to you. It is with a heavy heart that I am withdrawing from this election. I am currently being treated for a severe, debilitating bacterial eye infection, which started on nomination night and has been getting steadily worse, even with strong doses of antibiotics. The eye specialists are contemplating surgery on the abscess that I have, and because of this, I feel I must concentrate on getting better. I would think that myself and all the candidates here wish all the very best, and we offer our support to Shirley in her duress, because it must be quite upsetting for her to have to withdraw at such a late date after being nominated, and I'm sure that everybody here will feel the same. Thank you. Now, moving on as swiftly as we can, you can see that the candidates are around the table here. We have 18, and the running order, which will begin with Philip Ozouf there in the corner, was drawn in the Dumarry room before the commencement of this meeting, and each candidate will have, from Philip onwards all the way around the table, will have 3 minutes for their opening speech. Our Parish Secretary Rebecca will ring the warning bell when there are 30 seconds remaining, and I ask all candidates to make sure that they tie up their speech in that remaining 30 seconds. Once each candidate has gone through their opening speech, it has been decided to change the format of the questions that are traditionally asked at the end of each of these meetings, and I will ask for parishioners, please, for 3 concise questions, and I must ask that people who ask a question speak into one of the 2 roaming microphones that will be walked to the floor by Tracy and Jackie, which are our 2 parish assistants here. So we've got Tracy over there, and we've got Jackie over there. When you read your question, just remember I'm going to try and jot it down, so give me a little bit of time to write. Questions only. When it's questions, no speeches. Thank you. The candidates will have 1.5 minutes, commencing again with Philip Ozouf, to answer any or all the questions as they so wish. Should we have time, and all the candidates are very keen that we do, we will ask another 3 questions and then possibly another 3 questions following that. The general aim is that the meeting will be called to a close at approximately 9:30 p.m. Okay, just before we start, one house rule, of course: all mobile phones off, please. Don't want to hear any mobile phones ringing, it will disrupt us. So, the timing will commence as soon as the candidate commences speaking. So I ask Philip Ozouf, please, to be upstanding if he wishes to commence his speech. Thank you.
And you, the electors of Grouville, need senators with experience, ability and commitment. Elected representatives that have the courage to make decisions. Decisions that are sometimes difficult, but are always in the best long-term interests of the island. But more than that, elected representatives who understand Jersey's position in the world and are capable of representing Jersey internationally. Over the last 15 years, I've been called to make a lot of decisions in some of the most difficult departments in the States. In the last 6 years as Treasury Minister through a financial crisis, it is perhaps to be expected that I now face a greater challenge than some others in seeking re-election. At the end of those 6 years, despite that crisis, we have tackled a deficit, we have balanced our budgets, we have cut income tax for the majority of working people, we have increased the value of the strategic reserve by over 50%, we have delivered annual savings worth £60 million a year, we have rebuilt our reputation as a finance centre, and we have worked hard to restore our international credibility. I have worked with other ministers to lead the investment in a digital future. I have helped deliver the funding for social and affordable housing, helped healthcare reform, and also fast-tracked urgently needed funding for mental health facilities. I've worked side by side with the Chief Minister and Social Security Minister for a successful job creation programme that has meant unemployment is coming down. As a Treasury Minister, I am perhaps best known for my financial policies. That's understandable. And these colours are from St Saviour, I must say. But I am a farming great-grandson of a Grouville A, and a passionate Jerseyman. I care more about just finance. I care about reforming healthcare. I come from a family of teachers, and I care about the education of our youth. I care about the protection of our heritage and environment, and if elected, I would like to do more. I want to secure economic diversification, re-energise tourism, agriculture, and ensure that we really do develop the significant opportunities for the digital sector. I want to secure economic growth with business and lower the cost of living, meaning the spending of islanders is improved. One of the downsides of politics is short-termism, and my approach to getting things done is working hard, being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, and trying to find solutions, listening and then deciding, and always working with others. Ladies and gentlemen, you have an excellent set of candidates, and whatever your preferred candidate, I hope you will use your vote. For my part, I hope that my track record of ability, experience and commitment is deserving of at least one of your 8 votes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Philip. If you could switch your microphone off now, please. Thank you. Very good. And I hand over to Geoff Habin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for taking the trouble to be here with us this evening. On the 15th of October, you will be electing a new assembly. This is potentially the most important assembly that we are going to see for many years, because it is going to set the tone of the economic, social and structural parts of the island for many years to come. It is essential that whomsoever you elect, they put Jersey first. They put our community first. We are not part of the UK. We are not part of the EU. We are Jersey. And as such, anything we do must be with that best interest at heart. We must protest and argue with people from external pressures that would try and influence this, and keep our identity in the world. The assembly you elect is going to have to work very hard to rebuild trust and faith that very many people on this island seem to have lost. The only way this can be done is by electing an assembly that you feel will work together. Working together, things can be decided more quickly. Things can be assessed, decisions made, plans actioned. My name is Geoff Habin. I'm a businessman. I'm a management accountant, chairman of Jersey Air Search, and I want to put Jersey first. Thank you.
And now for Zoe Cameron.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a Jersey-born family doctor with a deep love of my island home, its traditions and people. My father, Rolf Bertram, was born in this parish at La Roque, and my grandfather spent time telling us stories of the fairies and giants that shaped your landscape. Little did I imagine when I did baby clinics here years ago that I would be coming back here to ask you to elect me to Senator for the States. So why me? I'm a GP who has listened to patients and tried to help them as best I can over the last 25 years. At times, they need other services. Sometimes these are excellent, but there are gaps. When these have become apparent, I've stepped out of my consulting room and tried to shape development, such as setting up the Brook Clinic, joining the Jersey Domestic Violence Forum, being medical advisor to Children's Service, and sitting on the safeguarding boards. In recent years, I've also acted as a representative for the Royal College of General Practitioners in areas of child health and mental health. I'm a member of the Royal College Adolescent Health Group and Vice Chair of the Primary Care Children's Safeguarding Forum that covers doctors working in this field throughout the UK. For the last 2 years, I have voluntarily spent most of my time as Secretary of the Primary Care Body, representing GP colleagues, trying to ensure that what already exists in the community is strengthened and not duplicated or undermined by health service developments, that the states were spending their money wisely. Many excellent ideas are generated as frontline staff got together to discuss how they could work more efficiently and effectively together for patients, such as the community midwife scheme and the call and check service that developed by Jersey Poach that won an award this weekend in the Sunday Times. But sometimes as ideas travel up the tiers of administration, what gets presented to the states bears little resemblance to the original discussions. Instead of extra staff and resources that could offer practical help to our patients, doctors and other frontline professionals are required to spend extra time filling in forms, doing tick box assessments, providing business cases to justify a need that we can all clearly see. This takes time away from frontline caring for patients, delays recovery and creates distress. I believe that that it's essential that there's somebody with frontline professional knowledge helping develop these services and making sure your money is spent wisely over the next 3 years in healthcare development. Your community support group in Grouville is an excellent example that can work with professionals to ensure that Jersey has the best community and health services in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Just don't forget your microphone there, switch off. And now over to John Young.
Thank you, Chairman. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and what a pleasure it is to be in Grouville this evening. 3 years ago, I was elected deputy for St Bernard's, and I entered the politics after careers in the public and private sector as an accountant and a manager, and after particularly seeing the Portlet development. And so the last 3 years, as a backbencher, I've worked to keep the planning minister on his toes, for regular questions, holding regular quarterly scrutiny hearings, taking up cases to the planning panel, complaints boards and royal court cases. And of course, in the record, I was a supporter of the Plemont campaign and the appeal group. I brought amendments to the island plan to protect St Bernard's Bay and the Coastal National Park and adopt new policies for over 55 housing. All were approved. I've taken on many individual cases on housing, regulation, population and planning and complaints board. I brought amendments to the planning law which gained approval to a new appeals system. Of course, there is a big agenda of a planning work, and the island's coasts are still under pressure of development. We've seen far too many overdevelopments out of scale, for example, on your own coast here, the Keppel Tower development. And I brought an amendment to planning policies to give greater protection for neighbouring properties. And of course, the developments here in Gorey Village, the housing scheme, the co-op at the Damar nurseries, all have impact of change and need planning rigour to accommodate those schemes. And so, therefore, the new planning minister will have a big role. And of course, here you are custodian of special assets. Grouville Marsh, the South Coast Intertidal Ramsar site and the oyster beds, and we need high water qualities. And of course, we must make sure these special areas are elected. so select and protected. But I'm not a single issue member. As a former health service manager, I know it's impossible for any society to fund the increase in health service, which is open-ended. And of course, I've heard many comments from doctors and the public about the two-site proposal for hospitals. Access to Overdale is poor. And I don't want to see a repeat of the Green Street Police saga, headquarters saga. The waterfront is my front-running site. I want to see the use of this land looked at for private uses, for public uses rather. And I want our new hospital to be something which we could all be proud. And I want to make sure particularly we are not copying the NHS model. I want to see work with GPs and voluntary bodies and primary health care, and voluntary bodies, and I want to set up particularly primary healthcare centres in the east and west of the island where GP practices and nurses can flourish and work. Easier for local business, less bureaucracy, education on vocational skills and initiative for job creation. And particularly boost tourism, event tourism, environment and heritage tourism, and a review of corporate tax where many locally operating business pay no tax. My 3 years have shown that one needs an all-island mandate. There will be stark choices. Now we're spending more money than we receive. We have a choice, cut tax, and so we need to protect frontline services. So I put myself forward. People have asked me for senatorial mandates, ladies and gentlemen, and I relish the challenge.
Thank you, John. And now moving on to Paul Routier.
Good evening, thank you. When I got up this morning, I knew it was going to be a really good day because I started the day outside the States building greeting children from Grouville School who had wanted to present me with a paper chain recognising the support that they thought of children's rights of education around the world. I have to say I was really impressed with their knowledge and understanding of developing countries. It was fantastic. As an island, we have shared in the global economic downturn and unusual unemployment levels. The social survey showed that 77% of islanders considered population as a priority. However, views across our community vary widely, and from having a closed door to having unlimited business licenses. The interim population policy approved by the state seeks to balance the demands of the island. The new states will need to incorporate the views of islanders when finalising the new framework, which includes all aspects of island life, the environment, the economy and community. When all views have been collated, we will then be in a better position to know what skills and size of population is needed. The Control of Housing and Work law, which I guided through the states, is deliberately structured to adapt to meet our community aspirations. These are challenging times which require clear thinking and appropriate decision making. And I hope I have shown as Assistant Chief Minister that I have those qualities. I have undertaken and completed several significant complex projects. This year I led the debate of the Charities Law, which was enthusiastically welcomed by the voluntary community sector, and I hope, if re-elected, to take that to the next phase. I also want to ensure that an inclusive equality strategy for people with disabilities is finalised, to progress the new mental health and capacity law, and to conclude the complex access to justice review. All these pieces of work require careful and thorough reviews of policies and law drafting, and then importantly implementing the recommendations. Our island businesses need a fiscal and regulatory environment which encourages growth. It must not be forgotten that the wealth generators pay taxes to fund the services our community require. However, controlling level of taxes must be a priority for a stable and prosperous economy. I do hope that I've shown that I have the skills, compassion and business sense to make sound decisions. If you would like me to continue in the States, I would be very pleased if you consider me for one of your votes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. And now, Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lyndon Farnham. I was first elected to the States as a deputy in 1999. I stepped down in 2005 to focus on my family and business commitments, returning in 2011 when I was elected senator. I am the serving Assistant Minister at the Home Affairs Department, where I hold special responsibility for the Jersey Fire and Rescue Service and the Prison Service. Now, I know how proud we all are of our excellent emergency services, but I have been especially proud to have served during a time when we have seen improvements in many areas, including changes in our police force leading to a greater public confidence in the police, and I'm pleased to report that levels of crime in Jersey continue to fall. I have successfully brought a number of propositions to the state since being re-elected, including a move to introduce political accountability for our justice system, and I now serve on the Justice Advisory Panel and the Bailiffs Consultative Panel. I am the immediate past president of the Jersey Hospitality Association, and I continue to champion tourism as an important pillar of our economy. I fully support the long overdue rejuvenation of Fort Regent, and I am leading the campaign for an international size 50-metre competition pool and associated facilities. And my appeal is, if we're going to have a swimming pool, let's do it properly. I also led the campaign to keep the island-wide mandate in the office of Senator, which I'm pleased to say is alive and well, and long may it continue. If you elect me, I shall be seeking the position of Economic Development Minister, not least because I believe that we must now put economic prosperity firmly back on the agenda, because in real terms in 2013, Jersey's economy was at its lowest level since 1998. From agriculture and the rural economy to sports and event-led tourism, from fintech and the digital economy to economic diversification and small business development. It's time to act. It's time to introduce the policies that will return strength, drive and energy to our economy. There is still a widespread belief in the island that the states are not performing effectively. The main concerns are that some politicians are motivated more by self-interest than the interests of the island, and that some simply do not have the knowledge, skills or experience to be able to do the job. And there is a lot to do to safeguard our future prosperity, for which we need people with real experience. We need people who are sensible, able and proficient, so we must choose our representatives carefully. My politics are not about left or right, or senseless bickering or time wasting. My politics are about getting things done. I do not favour party politics. I favour team politics, and I favour working together for the benefit of our island. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyndon. And now for Sarah Ferguson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, as you've gathered, my name is Sarah Ferguson, and you very kindly elected me in 2008. As far as personal information goes, you have my flyers on your seats, and if you want to take them home and read them, it, might put you to sleep tonight. As Geoff Habin said, this is the most important election we will have in the island since the 1940s. State spending is out of control and our income is falling. All is not lost, as at the moment we have assets to cover this. But as anyone knows, deficit spending becomes a habit. Ask anyone who's tried to get rid of their overdraft or their payday loan. Our expenditure is rising and our income is falling. We have fewer people paying tax, but no new source of income, of revenue for the states to balance this. Last year, we reduced the marginal rate by 1%. This has reduced states' income by 8 million. Not a lot in the scheme of things, but 8 million here, 8 million there, soon adds up. We've been under pressure from the UK and outside agencies regarding our internal tax systems, and we've been forced to change some systems because of these pressures. As a result, we have manufactured our own tax avoidance scheme for people living in the island, our own internal tax avoidance scheme. It's totally legal, but it's debilitating on our economy. The external pressures are not going away, And we need to re-examine our tax system to put the island back on the principled path charted by Cyril the Marquand back in the 60s. At the same time, there are expenditures which we must make. I want to see a realistic restructuring in health, with more power and less paperwork for nursing sisters. I want to see more autonomy for school heads. I want every child leaving school to be able to read and write and do arithmetic. I want better incentives for people to leave income support and get back to work. I want better use of computers to cut down on paper and postage. And I don't want Social Security sending out checks for 3p. And I don't want rates centralised. In 2008, I said we have a system where maintenance and infrastructure have been ignored in favour of new projects. What householder ignores painting the windows until they get rotten and fall out? I highlighted the windows in the old building in the hospital, the ones which face onto the path lab. I was there the other day, and they're exactly the same as they were then. What householder spends without carefully assessing where the money will come from, how they must prioritise, what is nice to have and what is essential, and the same principles apply to the states? We're all struggling with balancing our expenditure budgets, but at least we acknowledge what our budgets are. Currently, budgeting is still a game in the States. If it was not so, why would we have such large and elastic underspends at the end of this year? I'm sorry, have we got there? Oh, right, I repeat, this is the most important election for 60 years. Your vote is your voice. It matters. Please use it.
Thank you, Sarah. We seem to have a technical problem with our bell there, but never mind. I'm sure that the running team will fix it. Yes. So thank you, Sarah. And we'll move on now to Anne Southern. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased that the first Hustings are here in Grouville, where I bought my first house back in 1975. I taught at Grouville School for 3 years, and my children grew up and went to school here. I've noticed since I've left, developments have been tucked into every corner. So tonight I'd like to focus on population. You'll hear that growth is one of the mechanisms that will pull us out of our current financial difficulties and provide for an ageing population. But this is a short-term solution. It's like pyramid selling. What about the difficulties that will be created by a growing population? The interim population policy allows for a net inward migration of 325 people a year. Where are the 100 new homes that will be needed each year to go? Do you want to sacrifice more green fields in your lovely parish? With a housing shortage, how will our young people get a foot on the housing ladder? We could well be walking into social and economic disaster. We must have the political will to use the tool we have, the under-policed control of housing and work law, to control the population within sustainable limits. I suggest 3 solutions. Firstly, good succession planning is needed. Businesses need to train locals to fill anticipated vacancies. Secondly, companies should offer more training programmes to school leavers, which could offer support for degree courses or experience off-island. Thirdly, encouraging low-paying sectors like hospitality to pay a living wage could encourage our young people to go into these sectors. When I was teaching at Routier, a lot of young people would have liked to have become chefs or hotel receptionists, but they were told that they were low-wage and low-status occupations. We must ask why some sectors can only attract immigrant labour. Reform Jersey policies contain joined-up thinking. Addressing low pay is the key to several problems. Do you, as taxpayers, want to subsidise low-paying employers and their shareholders? Because that's what you're doing. A single person in a 1-bedroom flat and working a 40-hour week on the minimum wage will need about £130 a week in income support to survive. Reform Jersey wants to improve benefits for the less well-off. But we're not all about tax and spend. Our policy on raising the minimum wage and encouraging employers to pay a living wage is designed to save taxpayers' money, as well as promote fairness. Reform Jersey is about action. Our sitting members have already won propositions to investigate the living wage, the abuse of 0 hours contracts, and rent control, and we want to have a group of people in the States who can take forward the findings of these investigations. As part of a team, I can offer a greater hope of carrying out my policies than independent candidates. For a candidate who will keep her election promises, please vote for Anne Southern.
Thank you, Anne. And now for Philip Bailhache.
Good evening, and I too am delighted that the hustings open in my home parish of Grouville. I'm standing for election because I love my island and I hope that I have something to offer in the States. I also believe that there is unfinished business in terms of electoral reform. It was disappointing that some members refused to implement the decision of the majority in the referendum and completely undemocratic. Our electoral system is confusing to newcomers, unbalanced and unfair. Some voters elect 1 deputy, while others elect 2, 3 or 4 deputies. One of the deputies represents 1,300 electors, while another represents over 4,000, 3 times as many. In some constituencies, a deputy is elected by 300 or 400 voters, when by contrast a senator is elected by several thousand. And however good the individual candidates may be, it is also worrying that so many members are elected without a contest. Democracy involves giving voters a choice. The system is just not fair to the electorate. Many people like the island-wide mandate, and some say that they would like all members elected in that way. Yet it is clear that if you have 30 or 40 senators and 70 candidates or more seeking election, the system would be completely unworkable. Imagine a hustings like this with 60 candidates ranged before you, or a ballot paper with 60 or 70 names on it. Some want to go back to the old staggered system of 12 senators with 6 elected every 3 years. But we abandoned that system because people wanted a single election day when they could reject the entire government if they wished. They did not want to find unpopular senators who had not faced the electorate because they were halfway through their term, being elected or re-elected as ministers. So what is the answer? I think the answer is to divide up the island into a small number of districts and to have senatorial type contests in each of those districts. That would ensure that electors were given a choice. If you value the parish connection, as I do, you keep the constables in the States. But I have run out of time, and that is for another day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. And moving on to Alan Maclean.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I give up a successful business career to seek election as deputy in 2005. Since 2008, when I was re-elected as senator, I have held the role of Minister for Economic Development during the most severe global financial crisis imaginable. I'm proud to have had the opportunity to serve my island and our community, both locally and on the international stage. During that challenging time, I have taken many difficult decisions with the objective of stimulating the economy, improving job opportunities, and improving islanders' lives. I accept that not every decision has been as successful as I would have liked, but overall, I have a track record of consistently delivering positive results for islanders. I have overseen the transformation of the Economic Development Department, including reducing its headcount and cost. We instigated the integration of the harbour and airport, removing duplication and waste and substantially reducing costs. We've supported investment in improving air routes, like the introduction of EasyJet. We created Jersey Business to support and develop small and medium-sized businesses. We created Digital Jersey to promote and develop Jersey's digital sector, including exciting areas like fintech. We established Locate Jersey to drive inward investment, critical to diversification of the economy and job creation. In 2014 alone, Locate Jersey have helped 33 new businesses establish themselves in Jersey, creating 310 job opportunities. Through the recession, businesses struggled to secure funding for new ideas. We therefore created a £5 million innovation fund, appointing a professional independent board, hopefully to stimulate innovation and drive business growth. I've consistently championed the tourism industry, protecting its budget after years of cuts, and then appointing a shadow board to look at ways in which it can be rejuvenated. I've acted on the advice by moving to create Visit Jersey. I'm absolutely determined to see tourism grow, and by so doing, to see hundreds of small local businesses prosper and grow. We completely redesigned the beach lifeguard service against stiff opposition, removing the much-loved Australian lifeguards and appointing the RNLI. The result? A greatly improved service at a lower cost that now recruits critically almost all lifeguards locally and exports many out of the island to work on the Australian beaches. But there is more to do. We have to change. We have to modernise. My priority, if re-elected, would be controlling the cost of government. We must stop employing more people. We still face some serious challenges, and I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that I have the strong leadership qualities, proven ability, experience, and vision to help secure a prosperous future for our island and the whole community. And I ask you to consider giving me one of your votes on October the 15th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. And now on to David Richardson.
Good evening. My name is David Richardson, and I have many policies, so I better get going. My main overriding policy is to promote Jersey and other Channel Islands as healthy, robust, vibrant, and forward-thinking global centres of excellence in the finance industry. I work in the finance industry myself, and I would like to see our books balanced. I think there are many unique ways in which you can do that. One way would be to work with Guernsey and on a cost-cutting exercise, for instance, law drafting or cost of capital projects. I would also like to see the promotion of an energy minister, somebody who has the know-all and knows all about energy and energy issues, who will promote micro renewable energy projects, as well as establish investment feasibility programs in tidal energy schemes, such as the £2 billion Alderney Renewable Energy Scheme coming up in 2018. Look at your manifesto, you'll see an example of one of those turbines. I would also like to see the role of the Minister of Planning and Environment separated into two. They conflict at the moment. We need a Minister of Environment who has teeth. Look at those green algae in the bay. That would have been dealt with years ago had we had a proper environmental minister who had done something about it. Look at all the gross housing projects that have taken place. Look how long it took to deal with Plymouth. These need to be done now. I am not only work in finance, but I also was born and bred as a biologist. I worked in Africa, and I worked terribly hard to start one of the organisations which is very close to my heart, the Optimum Population Trust, which is now called Population Matters. Little do you know, but the world is 7 billion today, and it was 2 billion when I was a child. It will be 12 billion, ladies and gentlemen, by the year 2100 if we don't get on and do something about it. I am proud of the fact that Jersey has one of the lowest fertility rates in the world, and we should explore at exporting this idea overseas. We should export the nuclear-sized family and go along with it. My name is David Richardson. I hope you will vote for me in the forthcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you, David. If you could just switch yourself off. Thank you. And moving on to Chris Magee.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Magee, but it doesn't matter what my name is. What matters are the issues facing everyday people right now. We live in a time where more and more islanders are using food banks just to survive. The unemployment rate recently reached a historic high and shows no real sign of improvement. Thousands of islanders are living paycheck to paycheck, whilst the threat of higher GST to cover the mismanaged public funds looms heavy on the horizon. The island, and therefore everyone in this room, is now £250 million in debt with a £95 million deficit. Do you think that's good bookkeeping? Do you think the handling of your money in this way should be encouraged? There's been a proposal, which you may have seen in the JEP, touted as a property tax, which would raise taxes on renters whilst reducing taxes for landlords. Rent is already hilariously expensive on the island. To me, this is not a property tax, but a poverty tax, because that's what it will lead to. I can tell you now, categorically, that I will never vote for increasing GST, and I will never vote for taxing the poor to pay for the rich. What I would like to see is GST removed from children's clothing and from all locally grown organic produce. Whether you're raising whether you're raising children or raising crops, the cost is high enough as it is. All of my decisions, if elected, will be accompanied by a YouTube video explaining my reasoning to you, the people of Grouville, and the 11 other parishes, of course. In this way, I'll be providing you with a maximum level of transparency and accountability. Both features of island politics, which base purely on my interaction with the public during my campaign, are features that the Jersey political machine lacks. Now to address the elephant in the room. Cancer, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, PTSD, glaucoma, AIDS, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis. If you know someone with one of these conditions, cannabis could help them. You may have seen my campaigning for the legalisation of cannabis in the press. I'm proud of what I've achieved so far, but there's a lot yet to do. Some of you, like myself, will have very strong positive views on cannabis. Some of you will have strongly negative views. To those of you I ask, why do we deny people with the aforementioned conditions access to a substance which relieves their pain or muscle spasms or stimulates their appetite, or which would markedly improve their quality of life, or which could even cure them completely? Why, in the face of a plethora of studies from around the world spanning decades, are they currently being forced to run through a gauntlet of pharmaceutical drugs of ever-increasing potency and risk before even being considered and ultimately denied access to cannabis? Why do we do this while rushing to write over 11,000 prescriptions island-wide for synthetic heroin? Why are our doctors being hamstrung by outdated scientifically and morally unjustifiable legislation? Why are the sick needlessly suffering? Why does the current health minister support this practice? Why are we financing this? Why, after spending £2 million in related incidents in A&E last year alone, are we not addressing Jersey's real problem drug, alcohol? After legalisation of cannabis in the state of Colorado this January, over $160 million has been collected in cannabis taxes. This money will be spent on education. If Jersey were to legalise, regulate and tax cannabis as I propose, we wouldn't be scratching our heads wondering where the money for a new hospital would be coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And moving on now to Konrad Kruszynski.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for all your attendance tonight. For all those who don't know me yet, and I believe most of you don't know me yet, my name is Konrad Kruszynski, and I'm both Polish and British citizen. The fact is that I'm new to politics gives me an opportunity to bring fresh perspective into an old order. The reality is that many people, even those who have been living in Jersey for many years, are not fully engaging themselves into political life of this island. It is here where we live, where we work, where we raise our children, yet many of us still haven't really decided where the home is. This is because the minds are here, but they have left their hearts somewhere else. It is time to finally ask ourselves, where do we belong? Put your hearts and minds into your new home, and with passion and engagement, begin the new story. Today, I have heard someone saying, politicians won't change my life. I don't agree with that. But I do agree that Jersey politicians must actively engage and listen to what people say to rebuild that trust and change the perception of politics. I believe that new people with fresh ideas will be able to understand the current issues we are facing. Politicians should seek solutions through an active engagement with ordinary people, not just before the election, as it usually happens. but during the whole term. I would wish to see Ireland with no division in societies or groups. Only then we can live better, if we accept our differences and make them work to our advantage rather than disadvantage. Let us build legacy which will lay the foundations for future generations. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Konrad. Over to Andrew Green.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Andrew Green, as in the colour. And as I come to the end of my second term as Deputy for St Helier, I've reflected on my past 6 years. And it's evident to me, without sounding conceited, that I have actually achieved a great deal, both as Minister, but also as a backbencher. Time doesn't allow me to list all these achievements, but if you'd like to talk to me afterwards or email me, I'd be happy to share those with you. But if I had to pick one achievement, just one of those achievements, I would pick the Housing Transformation Programme, transforming homes and transforming lives. Jersey is still battling its way out of one of the deepest worldwide recessions ever known. It's been hard, very hard, and to many ordinary working people it still is hard. Yet we have much to be grateful here in Jersey. We've weathered the storm better than most jurisdictions. For example, our house prices have been relatively stable. We haven't had the bubble of London and the depressions of Southern Ireland. We invested, and we were right to invest in infrastructure projects which provided much needed facilities and will continue to provide that. Infrastructure projects that provided also employment. We are poised, I believe, to take advantage of the emerging recovery. And as we do so, we must make sure that we maintain the wisdom of our predecessors as we seek new opportunities for economic growth. We must encourage and support the current industries such as finance, tourism, agriculture. But stable government is essential. There's an essential part to this, and that is one of the reasons why I'm seeking today an Ireland mandate. As and when government's income levels return to the levels they were before and increase, we must save. We must save and restore the stabilisation fund ready for the next recession, because that's one thing that's definite. Cycles, recessions come. Like all Western communities, one of our biggest challenges is what's often referred to, it's not a term I like, but often referred to as the ageing community. This is both, in my view, a challenge and an opportunity. An opportunity to use the knowledge, experience and skills of those older members of our community to ensure inclusion, not exclusion. Appropriate housing and support will be essential, not forcing people into nursing homes too early. Last weekend I visited Grouville and I spent some time in the new development David Kirsch built, and without exception they told me how wonderful life was in Grouville, and that some told me about the fairly new parish magazine they were enjoying. I'd like to expand on this, but time doesn't happen. If elected as Senator, I'd like to go for Health Minister. Courage and vision is required, and I believe I've demonstrated those skills in housing. Please give me one of your votes on October the 15th. Go Green 14. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And now for Malcolm Ferey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Malcolm Ferey, and I'm standing as an independent senatorial candidate in these elections because I believe that the skills and abilities that I've gained throughout my career will stand me in good stead to make a real difference. I'm a 49-year-old Jerseyman, married to Beverly, and we make our home in the parish of St Saviour. We have 2 grown-up daughters, of whom we are justifiably proud, as I'm sure any parent would be. Let me tell you a little bit about my background and my career. My career really began with a period of time in the finance industry, where I worked as a financial consultant, organising personal finances and structuring finances so that people could improve their future. So I invested in pensions and investments and savings and life insurance. After I spent about 7 years in that industry, I decided it was time to move on. So I took up a position at the Department of Social Security, working in the compliance section. And I worked my way through up the department to eventually take the section when it became compliance and governance. So I had a good understanding of social security legislation and how that applied to the ordinary man in the street. In my current role as Chief Executive of the Jersey Citizens Advice Bureau, I regularly liaise with states departments and politicians to bring about real change. I see the problems that people face on a day-to-day basis in this island, and part of my role is to provide the solutions to those problems. But as well as my work, I've also got some voluntary experience that I'd like to tell you about now. And I spent some time in the Honorary Police when I served as a centenier for the parish of St Helier for a period of 3 years. And that was at a time when the centenier was the prosecuting authority in the court. So there was no police legal advisor behind you as there is now. So the centenier basically took that case all the way through. Now that was a challenging and rewarding time. I think that Jersey is steeped in the volunteer tradition, and the Honorary Police is a great example of how people give back to society. I'm also involved in the Liberation Day celebrations, and that's a day that I look forward to every year on May the 9th. It holds a special place in my heart because my mum and dad met on that day. So again, it's a special day for my family, and it's a special day for me and the island. You've just seen 1/3 of the House get elected unopposed. Now, we could argue about the rights and wrongs of that, but in this senatorial election, you have a chance to vote for some new faces. This is your chance to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And moving on to Ian, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Speaker 16th, you'll be relieved to hear that I'm losing my voice. I have been honoured to serve as Chief Minister for the last 3 years. And there's no question that during those 3 years, the island has faced a number of challenges, and we have not escaped from the worldwide effect of the economic downturn. And as head of government, I have sought to find consensus and to deliver for islanders facing up to the problems and making difficult decisions. Challenges remain. You've heard every candidate tonight say that. But I believe that by uniting together as one community, we can continue to have a strong future as we've had a strong past. I want my daughters to grow up in a society which is inclusive, where there is support for those who are less well off, for those who are old, for those who are vulnerable, but also for those who have initiative and want to better themselves. A Jersey where we embrace diversity, a Jersey where we all feel that we have a future. That's why over the last 3 years, a number of initiatives have been prioritised, and I haven't got time to talk about them all. We've enabled 50 families to buy new homes. We've introduced long outstanding social legislation, discrimination and family-friendly legislation. We started to reform the public sector. These are but a few. These are beginnings, but we must go further and faster. We're starting e-government. We need to increase support for businesses, innovation and enterprise. I wholeheartedly endorse the efforts of all those involved in helping 4,500 islanders into paid work, government working with employers. But more than ever, we need to foster an environment that encourages economic growth and diversification. We've heard about the opportunities that have been created. Digital Jersey, the Innovation Fund, Jersey Business, a new shadow board's been set up. We've supported agriculture, but we must support the promotion of innovation in new technologies and niche areas such as fintech and Bitcoin. Finally, failing to invest in our essential infrastructure at the right time only makes it more expensive in the long run, and we've heard other candidates say that. But that's why we have invested in a new liquid waste system and started the process of the delivery of a new hospital. We've developed a new energy policy, and we've increased emphasis on long-term financial capital and strategic planning. Savings across government have been delivered, but more can be done. Much has been achieved, but many tasks remain. It would be an honour for me to utilise my experience, my motivation and my energy to continue to serve you, to build a healthy and secure future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. And now for Guy de Faye.
Have you noticed the smell in this room? It's not the parish drains. It's a smell of more rarefied quality. It's the whiff of hypocrisy. It's the hypocrisy of those states members on this panel who've done their best to abolish senators but are quite happy to run for re-election when it's convenient. I want to give you my assurance that I'm on this platform because I believe in the role of senators. I want to fight to retain senators, and if you elect me, I will put the question that no one else has dared to put to the public yet. Do you wish to retain the island-wide mandate or not? You've got the constable's question this coming election, and I say no more changes to senators until we clarify exactly what the public want. I know what you want because I read the Murray poll about 8 years ago. The great regret at the time was that virtually no other states member actually understood how to read a Murray poll, which has left us in the position we're in now. Now we're in a bit of a mess, thanks to a recession that was not of our making. But as we come out of that mess, I want to see us take it easy on the low and medium wage people in this island. It's time we shifted the burden onto those who can afford to help pay us off. But I do not want us to see go down the road of higher taxes when I discovered to my astonishment that whilst the private sector takes a hammering, the public sector has been quietly growing. We have, to my astonishment, thanks to the overview of the states members who've been in there for 6 years, now over 7,000 public servants being paid for out of your taxation. And again, I don't want to hit the low-paid and the middle-wage civil servants and public servants. No, the people who will have to take the pay freezes first should be the senior management, and we work our way down from there to start solving the problems. And have we got problems? Only recently we discovered that our major utilities, solely owned by the states, in fact have been working under the principle of maximise dividends, maximise shareholder dividends. To you and me, that's boardroom bonus culture. We know one of the bonus figures, £118,000. I say turn this around. In terms of JT, can we have just cheap phone calls and data charges for the public and not massive dividends for the treasurer to stick down the back of his sofa? I want to see change. I will give you the solutions. I've done it in the past. You don't necessarily like everything I have done in the past, but what I will do is I will do it honestly, I'll do it straight, and you will know that I will not be doing any spinning.
Thank you, Guy. And now for Sean Power.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Power, and in case you haven't noticed, I wasn't born in Grouville. But my claim to Grouville tonight is that my proposer is sitting up there, Cara Murphy, and I'm very privileged that she did propose me for senator. Why am I standing for senator? Picking up on what Philip Bailhache said, my submission to the Electoral Commission was for 30 senators and 12 constables preserving the island by the parish system. That was rejected. I then supported option B. That was rejected by the states. So I have a bit of an agenda when it comes to electoral reform and reform of the states. So far I've been ignored. Why did I get into politics? I got into politics almost accidentally. I was involved some years ago with an attempt to save a ferry company. I lost that fight. But last year I'm happy to say that I was involved in successfully getting Channel Island lines relaunched after Hewlin enough packed in. So I've got a track record in the marine industry and in shipping. I may be better known for planning and housing. And as Andrew Green referred to tonight, I started the Housing Transformation Programme, and Andrew very successfully concluded it. I've done work at the housing department, I've done work at planning, population and migration, and indeed what I've said earlier to my interest in shipping and the marine industry. I could go on for another 30 minutes, but I can't. I'm Vice President of the Animal Shelter. I'm co-founder of Caring Hands. I chair Stepping Stones. I'm a member of the Jersey Community Relations Trust. And I live in St. Brelade, and I'm still a deputy for St. Brelade. My interests, as are in my manifesto, are largely to do with protecting the economy, diversifying the economy, making it easier to do business in Jersey, controlling population and migration. We police the companies that come to the population office, but we don't police the people that don't come. So we have to deal with the cash-in-hand economy, and we have to deal with the grey economy, and we don't allocate any resources to that. And that really hacks me off. So I'm here tonight, the first of the senatorial hustings, to say that I've served my apprenticeship as a deputy in St. Brelade for 3 terms, and I believe I'm ready to take on the challenge of senatorial and directing the course of this island for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. And now I'd just like to thank all the candidates for their very good timing on their 3 minutes there, which has now brought us to just approximately 8:33. So that gives us an hour, just over an hour maybe, to ask the questions. Now, if I can just remind people that I will need 3 concise questions from the floor, from parishioners, please. And I would ask, hands up, please. This gentleman here, if you'd just like to wait for Tracy to give you the microphone, and I'd be very grateful if you could have your name and the question.
Anthony Lewis. I am a 46-year-old disabled man who is unable to work and currently unable to drive. Yet I do not qualify for a bus pass. Do you think Jersey does enough to help disabled people, and what would you hope to change?
Thank you. I think I interpret that as Mr. Lewis, you're a disabled person and you're asking, does Jersey do enough to help its disabled people? Right, any other questions? Can we have a question number 2, please, from the floor? Jackie, if you could just...
This question's directed at Chris Magee. If cannabis was legalised and...
Excuse me, sorry, can we have a generalised question, please? We can't have personally given questions. You have to address your question as a general question to everybody, so everybody can answer the question.
Okay. Because our social housing sector has now been turned over to a private company, it's set at 90% of the market rate. Which safeguards are in place to stop private rents rising and the social housing rents rising with them?
Just to recap there, I take that as you're worried that the private housing sector is going to take over the public rented sector and dictate the rental rates.
Yes.
And a third question from the floor, please. Anybody brave enough to stand up and ask a question? Yeah, this chap over here, thank you.
Yes, sir. I'd like to know whether the candidates are going to support or go against keeping the constables in the States, and what is their reasons for that?
So that's candidates' views on keeping constables in the States. Yes, question number 2. Could we just have your name, please? Christopher? Good. And number 3, questioner, please.
David Cadway.
Very good. Okay, so question 1 from Mr. Lewis. Do the states do enough to help disabled people on the island? Question 2. Is the public sector rental system being dictated to by the private system? And number 3, what are the candidates' views on constables remaining in the States? And we will go around the table in the same order as we did before, beginning with Philip Ozouf.
Thank you. I think you get the short straw with the first one because I have to think quickly. Can I, first of all, commend Anthony Lewis for answering a question this evening. If anybody is a champion of disability rights, then he is the man, and he has done a great job. I didn't know that you couldn't get a bus pass, Anthony. I didn't know that, and I think that many of us would want to fix that. I was one of the few States members that went to the Disability Forum at the Town Hall at the weekend and showcased some of the issues that have got to be done. There's a lot done, and there's more to do in both disability and mental health and other issues, and we need to deal with some of the stigmas in these whole areas, and I certainly think that needs to be more, and that's at the heart of the reason why we're doing more and putting more money in healthcare spending. Candidates will say state spending is going up. It's going up for healthcare, and it's the right thing to do, and disability issues are part of that. In terms of housing, I'm absolutely going to defend the decision to borrow 40-year, 250 million at some of the lowest interest rates possible. And income support people get the benefit of that 90% rental charge, and we don't subsidise those people who don't need support because the income tax, the income support system works. The solution for housing costs is uncomfortably supply, and yes, controlling immigration, but putting in supply. And that states something that the States has not dealt with before, but we need to do. And I think I've answered the third question. Absolutely yes for constables. I'm a son of a former constable, and constables should stand in the States. Otherwise, we will dismantle our honorary system and everything that we've built over many years.
Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, very good question, and I thank you very much, and I applaud the way you asked it as well. Very well done. Senator Ozouf has said that a lot is now going into mental and physical disability within the States, but we still have a long way to go to change public attitudes and employer attitudes. And this is going to take time, and until we do that, you will not get a fair shake. And this is something that we all have to pay regard to. It is changing, but not fast enough. Social housing, yes, Senator Ozouf's answer was actually extremely good. It is about supply. Whilst there is a shortage of social housing prices, there is pressure on pricing. And until we can address that, then it's always going to be there. I was asked by somebody when I walked in this evening if I would have put a badge on for constables. And I didn't mean to be rude when I said no, because I expected the question and I wanted to say it in open forum. I do support it. They should be there.
I think the States can do a lot more for disabled people. As a GP, I have concerns about the way the impairment benefit is assessed, and I don't really feel that's fit for purpose. There's some exciting developments with the voluntary sector and the Jersey Disability Partnership, which is finding a voice, and I think that needs to be strengthened. So yes, we do need to listen more to people like yourself to inform our policy in the future. With regards to rents and increasing the maximum funding to 90%, I think it's very important that the benefits, people on benefits and in employment, only those that can afford to pay that maximum are made to do so. All too often, I kind of get the impression that people are sometimes trapped on benefits because to take the risk, to take some of these low-paid jobs, particularly since the advent of zero contracts, means that you're almost trapped on the benefits because of the difficulty in paying the high rents on this island. And with regard to the constables, I think it's essential they stay in the States. They're the closest people to parishioners who have the voice of the people to be able to reflect on how States policies will affect you. Thank you.
Anthony, all our hearts go out to you. I think you're a shining example, and you've shown how you can not overcome, but you certainly can rise above those issues. I don't think we do enough at all for our disabled in the island. We don't have a disability discrimination law. Access to public buildings is poor to non-existent. It's something we have to put right. And of course, in our social security system, we are prevalent in looking at means testing, where rather the thing should be needs testing, and I'm pleased that the Social Security Minister's taken that on board with the issues to disabled children. On the issue of constables, I've never taken a public position on option A and B. I support the role of constables in line with Clothier. We have the bedrock of our society. We've got to delegate tasks, but they do a separate job. And my personal view is I'd like an external review to see how we can structure that within the states. Need to do legislative review, the committee work, a lot of solid work to do. So I'm definitely in favour of having the constables, important role, but I don't support personally the automatic states position in the states. I think they should stand for election and constables having separate elections for constables. But that's only my personal view. I've not been an advocate to either A or B. It's just when asked to have a position, I face it honestly, that's my personal view. And it will need an external review, and the state should not be wasting time, in my view, to address this and get nowhere.
Thank you. Are we doing enough for disabled people? No, we're not. It's something I've been doing campaigning for 30 years about trying to improve the lives of people with disabilities, and I currently are chairing the Service Users Forum, and the point about not having a bus pass I wasn't aware of, and we're having a transport policy review, which I'm sure we will put that into there. I have had the pleasure of cycling from London to Paris with Tony, so I have known him a little while, and it was a real pleasure to be part of that team. It was first class. The 90% policy of rentals, I think it was a good decision to make, because what we needed to do was to ensure that we had sufficient funds to actually keep the quality of the housing in good order. There was a level that was required to fund that those improvements. There is the protection of anybody who's having difficulty in paying those rents of the income support system. Some people have criticised the income support system, but it is there to support people who are having difficulty in paying their rents. With regard to the Conitab, the experience I've had with working with them in the States, I have to say, if they hadn't been there in the last few years, the island would be in a poorer place, because with some of the decisions, without their knowledge and their understanding of the parish system, we would have made some silly decisions. So I support them being there.
Anthony, I'm rather embarrassed to learn that you couldn't get a bus pass. You should be able to. Well, something has to be done about that. A lot is being done for the disabled, but there's a lot more to do. Keep doing what you're doing, keep campaigning, and I'm sure you're going to continue to get results. Thank you. I fully also endorse the moves recently with the establishment of Andium homes. Those who need support, financial support with rents and housing will continue to get it, but it's about providing good quality housing for people to be proud of, and it's about the supply and the quantity of housing we build. And the move recently by the Treasury to secure, and the Housing Minister to secure the funding to do this is welcome, and it's believe you me, it's a big relief that we can breathe a little bit easily without being complacent about the future supply of housing. Yes, I fully support the constable's automatic right to sit in the States. Not only do they bring a level of common sense most of the time to the Assembly, we must also remember that we are a unicameral system. We have one chamber. We don't have two. We don't have an upper house. Thank goodness we can barely manage with the one. So it's important we have the mix. We have to sort out the constituencies. Deputies can no longer continue to be elected with a couple of hundred votes. We need super constituencies. We need to keep at least 6 senators, and we need to keep the constables. Thank you.
Right. That's a fabulous machine. Can I have a go with it afterwards? Yes, I think people parking in disabled spaces should be fined £100 when they're not disabled. And I think you should be able to get a temporary licence if you're temporarily disabled. The housing market worries me because the housing department, or the social housing, Andium now, really has the majority of the, or a very sizable portion of the rental market. And therefore, I think anything it does with prices sets the price for the rest of the market. And I don't think that the private landlords are following states' prices, so we put them up to we call 90% of the market, but then everybody else does. So I think we need to be a bit careful about that. And unfortunately, we have pressure at the moment from uncontrolled immigration. Connie Tubbs is a former centeneer in St Brelard. The honorary system is fantastic. The parish review system saves so many youngsters from going into court and having a criminal record. I think it's great. As to the Connitabs in the States, I'm not sure at the moment. And when I joined the States, I was absolutely convinced, yes, they should be there. And at the moment, I'm really thinking about it.
No, Anthony, we're not doing enough to help disabled people. They should receive income support that actually covers the cost of their impairment, whether that be a bus pass or any other form of transport. The anti-discrimination law is working its way through the states. We've had race, we've had sex, but we haven't yet had disability, and I think that's the biggie, because it's going to have a cost to it. Is education, for example, going to pay for readers so that blind teachers can do their job? I think that's a nettle that we need to grasp. In terms of housing, I think it's a bad step that public rents are 90% of private rents. I think it's going to, and they're going to go up higher than inflation, and that's really going to work to the detriment of young people who want to save for a deposit on a house. So I do think rent should be lower. The constables, I'm afraid I don't agree with the automatic right of the constables to sit in the States. I know the constables do a wonderful job in their parish, and that's what they are elected, or in the case of this election, not elected to do. We have succession planning, and they rise to that position, and they do that position very well. That doesn't mean they can't sit in the States. They can be elected to sit in the States if that's what you want. If clothier was applied, you in Grouville would be entitled to 3 States members. You would have your deputy and your constable, who you're clearly happy with, and you could have 1 extra member as well, if that's the way you want it. Thank you.
I think one of the advantages of hustings is that candidates tend to get asked questions which make them think about things that they would otherwise not have thought about. And I'm very grateful for Anthony Lewis's question, because like everyone on the platform, I have admired his courage for a great many years. I'd never thought about the question of bus passes. I'm sure we should be thinking about it. We have done, we do quite a lot for disabled people in the island, but I'm sure there is more that could be done. And the question that was being put has certainly stimulated me, and I'm sure others, to think about the question for the future. So far as the constables are concerned, I do think the constables should remain in the States, because I feel very strongly that the parishes are the heart of island life. They are really what make Jersey different from other places. The character of all the different parishes and the things that happen in the parishes are a marvellous part of the richness of island life. If we remove the constable from the States, we will diminish the role of the constable, and the risk is that we will diminish the parishes as well, and that I think would be a pity. So for the present, at any event, I am strongly in favour of keeping the constables in the States.
Ladies and gentlemen, the trouble with getting to number 10, you're beginning to run out of things to say, and I pity my colleagues to the left. Anthony, thank you very much for that question. I was actually stopped in the street the other day by a lady who had a similar problem, that she wanted to get a bus pass and couldn't. She had children, she had prams and all the paraphernalia. She couldn't get a pass, she couldn't afford really the travel difficulties. And the question is, why we have to come to a situation like this in a parish hall hustings for you to have to raise this question. You shouldn't have to do it. We should have known about it and be able to deal with issues to do with disabled people. If we can't help as a government people who are in genuine need, what are we here for? It's something that needs to be dealt with. And I might add that the system of support is sometimes too rigid. People feel almost criminalised at times with genuine needs who need genuine help. And there are other people abusing the system, and it's dealing with the abuse that needs to be balanced out as well to make sure we don't waste money unnecessarily with the wrong people getting support. As far as social housing is concerned, the system has improved the stock without question. It's getting people housing that they deserve. The matter about 90% of rents, there is a risk of putting up costs unreasonably, but it's right to have fair rents. It's right that the protection is the income support system. It's what that's going to cost in due course. We've seen income support grow from 70 million to about 95 million since it started in 2008, and it's rising. We have to make sure the right people get the right support and we control the costs appropriately. I support the constables. That's why I'm wearing the Yes badge.
Yes, I see some vindictiveness against certain people here. I apologise for that. I worked for many years in Joseph Ferguson on mental health and discovered the same thing with people with mental health. Therefore, I think society's still not come to terms with handicaps of any sort. So thank you for your question. As for social housing, as an economist, I would say it's supply and demand. Obviously, the immigration is tremendously high in this way. I will support measures to control or help control immigration in sorts. It's got to be broken down. Certain times you absolutely, we need nurses, therefore we should have a nursing home. We need specialised teachers. As a teacher, I can see that. We've had to import people from South Africa. But we don't want people to stay for the whole lives. We want them to come for 5 or 6 years till we find somebody locally. So we really need specialised housing for those people. So the immigration and housing are all related. Therefore, we've got to break it down before we will actually answer this problem of pricing for social housing. Obviously, I am for social housing as higher quality as possible. As for the constables, I'm afraid I sit for separating the two. I would bring about automatically, I think we should separate the constables from the States Assembly. I would bring about, this will bring an automatically healthy reduction in the numbers of men sitting in the Assembly. I do then believe that the constables will make their own assembly, look after parochial affairs, veto legislation, have their own powers to scrutinise. Their salary should reflect their functions and roles and experience. Thank you.
Well, as we get further around the table, I'm just going to try and keep this short and sweet. In answer to your first question, do the states do enough to help the disabled? I personally don't think so. I think it's a travesty that you and other people with in similar positions don't have access to bus passes. That's something that is definitely should be rectified immediately. I think there is a transport problem on the island, and the over-reliance on cars does nothing to help that. There is a lack of disabled spaces as well. So yeah, more needs to be done. Certainly more needs to be done. I've met with people who are disabled themselves and are being deliberately denied access to scientifically proven medicine. I'm not a one single issue candidate by any means, but I've met with people with MS, I've met people with a range of debilitating diseases. Some of them are young, some of them are old, and they're being denied access to medicine. They then grow it themselves, and then they find themselves dragged through the court system because the government is unwilling to provide what they need. Moving on to the second question, what's to stop private rents rising? Essentially nothing. You have the law of supply and demand, but there are limits on that. You can't build an infinite amount of houses in Jersey because that's only going to increase the value of every square foot, which is going to see prices go up again. It's to have it tied to 90%, I think, is a was a mistake. I didn't have anything to do with that, but I think that there's a lot of potential for abuse there with rents. I think that the constables do perform very important roles. I think they're all very community-driven and very very hard-working people, but I don't think they should get an automatic seat in the States. For every minute they're spent in the chambers is a minute or an hour or a day, as the case may be, not attending to parish matters at the local level. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, in relation to question number 1, yes, the state is not doing enough in terms of disabled people, but I think the issue is much broader and doesn't only relate to disabled people, but also financially disadvantaged people in Jersey, which constitutes a great part of Jersey society. I propose, therefore, improving access to majority of public facilities for disabled people. Jersey simply lacks those. I also propose reducing doctor fees for people on minimum wages, provided they have lived in Jersey for at least 5 years. For people on long-term incapacity allowance. In relation to question number 2, I propose scrapping the current housing legislation, qualification legislation, which makes poor poorer and rich even richer. Let the housing market regulate itself on the basis of demand and supply, and let's not waste any more taxpayers' money for housing officers, bureaucracy, and courts. Thank you.
Contrary to what most people say, I could talk for about half an hour on each of these questions, but I won't be allowed to. No, we don't do enough for the disabled. Well, and also, we don't look enough at what the disabled can do. We concentrate on what they can't do instead of supporting them in what they can do, nor do we look after the carers that look after them. And so there's a lot of work to be done. It has improved, but there's a lot more work to be done. Now, 90% rents. You know, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get the same result. When we had 60% rents, we were subsidising some people that didn't need subsidy, and we had no money to invest in repair and in upgrading and in new houses. So when I became housing minister, I inherited an £80 million outstanding bill for maintenance alone. That's because we were subsidising people in a hidden way. Was that right to do? No, it wasn't. So 90% is right. Rest assured, part of that assurance I sought when I took that forward was that those that really needed support, really needed the help, would get that from Social Security. Those that didn't would no longer receive the hidden subsidy. End result, look at Pomdore Farm, look at some of the other estates that we've done up, where people are spending £50 a week less on heating and on energy. That's right to do. 90% wasn't plucked out the air, economic advice. 100% we were in danger of leading the market. 90% we're following the market. So supply, supply, supply will put that right as well. And should the constables be in the States? Well, that's my question that I put to this assembly because I'm sick to hear of hearing one side say they should and one side say they shouldn't. I want to hear from you, the public, should the constables be in the States. If you want me to come off the fence on balance, I think they should, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, Anthony, I was aware that you wouldn't be able to get a bus pass. Last year, through part of my work of the Bureau, we developed a website called the Jersey Online Directory. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that. Okay, it's www.jod.je. There's a specific button for transport. The whole point of the Jersey Online Directory is to put people in care needs, connect them up with care providers who can help with all sorts of issues that people have. That's a piece of work that the Bureau undertook in conjunction with Health and Social Services. As that website I'm very proud of because it's reaching out to people who are either carers or who have care needs and giving them the services that they need. Let's not forget that voluntary and community services do a great job as well. But you know, people don't always want to rely on charities, but at the end of the day, that's what they're set up to do, is to help people in those situations. Should the constables stay in the States? My answer is definitely yes. If you remove the constables from the States, there is no doubt you will see the disintegration of the honorary system as a whole. Then when there's a community event in the parish that needs policing, there will be a huge cost attached to that. When you want people dealt with for minor offences, there will be a huge cost attached to that. Just because something is a well-established tradition does not make it wrong. Just because it's different does not mean that it's out of step. We've got something which is unique in Jersey. Let's keep it going. Let's preserve it for future generations.
We're going to hear all sorts of things during this election from various candidates. Can we control states' expenditure? Can we reduce the numbers? The answer to those is yes, and we're doing that through the reform of the public sector. But we equally hear from candidates that should we put more money into disability? The answer is yes. So we're going to need to spend more money in certain areas. Anthony is absolutely right. We are not doing enough for the disabled members of our community. And Senator Routier and I have allocated some of our budget now to start a mapping process of disabilities and research right across our community. If I were to ask you how many people with disabilities do we have in our community, you could all pick a number, and I would not be able to tell you if you were right, because we do not know. We do not know what all the conditions are. We don't know how many people there are. Therefore, we can't even properly plan the services that we need or make the changes to the buildings that we need. So we're starting that mapping and research work, and it's got to be done in conjunction with business as well, because it's about public awareness of what disabled people need and how we can support them and work with them. And it's about what businesses are going to need to do as well, to look after the people who are working for them, because it's about ability. Disabled people can work, they can be largely productive members of our community, but we've got to get used and we've got to make changes to allow that to happen. So we're not doing enough, but we are absolutely committed to doing more. And once we've done that mapping work, once we've done that research work, we're going to have to spend a lot more money on it as well. Is that the right thing? I believe it absolutely is, and I'm not going to answer the other two. You can see the answer to one just there.
Well, when I was Minister of Transport, we found more disabled spaces in town, apparently not enough already. We found space in Sand Street car park for the shop mobility programme. I think that's moving along successfully. We brought in buses with wheelchair access, and before my time we already had a number of taxis with wheelchair access. But I am astonished that you cannot get hold of a bus pass. And I'm pretty certain that in my day, we would have found you something out of the Community Development Fund scheme to sort that out. I actually suspect it's a matter for Social Security. And there's some former Social Security ministers along this platform. You can ask them afterwards. Constables in the States. I would like to see a state populated entirely by senators and constables. I'll be honest, given the choice between the two, I'd vote for senators as opposed to constables, but I really would like to say goodbye to the deputies, with the greatest respect to Deputy-elect Labbe, who's probably in the room. And in terms of Andium, I think we've got to just suck it and see what happens. I'm worried about the accountability. I'm worried about how tenants are going to be able to make complaints, but I'm even more worried about this creeping move to keep introducing quangos to run everything that we appear to be incapable of running ourselves. I think I'm worried that ministers and departments are reneging on their responsibilities, that these quango outfits are going to be unaccountable. And if you really want to cheer yourself with a bit of light reading, read the Shadow Tourism Board report on how we're going to get 1 million tourists into this island in the year 2020, and see if you can find one sentence that explains how it'll be done.
I'll deal with the three questions in a slightly different order. The first one, I've already said, with regard to constables, my submission was 30 senators and 12 constables. Then on option B, it was supporting the constables in the States. I don't have anything else to say. I'm wearing a badge that says support and keep the constables in the States. With regard to Andium, I would have done it differently, and Ian and Philip, and I think some of the council ministers know I would have done it differently. I would have cut Andium completely free, without debt. And the way the debt was structured, I would have set it up like JT or Jersey Electricity or Jersey Water, instead of this business where it has to send 6.2 million every 12 weeks back to Treasury. With regard to Anthony, apart from the bus pass, and there's enough chief ministers and ministers here to sort out a sodding bus pass, excuse my English, so let's do it. But apart from anything else, Anthony has shown remarkable courage in coming here tonight and asking a question. And what he has shown is dealing with life on life's terms. Life isn't always fair. life isn't always equal, but he's shown that tonight. I deal with people with other disabilities, mental and emotional disabilities. Tonight, two of my charities are housing 31 men in St Helier, St Oban and St Peter. So I know about this kind of stuff. Other than that, I've got very little to say. I'm just remarkable, full of support for people who express their disability, show their disability, and get on with life. Thank you.
Very well. With the time at just gone 9:05, I think we have time, if everybody's amenable to that, to try and put some more questions from the floor to our candidates. Do we have any more parishioners of questions? Tracy, if you could just bring the microphone.
No? All right. Sorry. My name's Janice Baker. I'd like to know why making people unemployed, which comes at a huge financial and social cost, how does this help the economy?
Why making people unemployed helps the economy? How does it? Okay, that's question one in this round. Any more questions from the floor? Tracy, please, the lady at the back, in the middle there.
Hello, my name is Sharon Eddy. I would like to know what the candidates feel are the priorities for our education service.
And that's priorities. What are the priorities for the education service? And do we have a third question from the floor? From a parishioner? Yes, we do. Jackie.
Thank you. My name's Maria Millen. I'd be interested to know what the candidates think about the current 0 hours system. I think we all recognise that it is being abused, although there are businesses that are seasonal that do need it. And I would like to know if there are any plans to actually police it in some way.
And that's from Maria there. The current 0 hours system, will it or how or has it been policed? Righty-ho. Okay, so that's 3 more questions for our candidates to think about. What we agreed before was that we would start at B2, which is with Geoff on this particular occasion, and we must not forget to go back to Mr. Ozouf at the end.
Thank you. 3 extremely good questions, if I may say. Mrs. Baker, how does making people unemployed help the economy? It's quite simple, it doesn't. Because that is economics. If you haven't got businesses that can afford to employ people, they have to make people redundant. It is the choice and the need of the Assembly to wind up our economy so that we can get people back into employment again. But what you can't do in the meantime is cause businesses to go bankrupt because they have to keep employees. It is basic economics, and nobody likes making people unemployed. It's horrible. What you try and do is get them back in. But if I may, that leads on to your 0 time. 0 time contracts. In the 5 years that we've had with this downturn, as has been said, was not of our making, is something to give people something. And it is really not a lot, but it is something. Yes, there are people abusing it, but I think that is truly a minority. The majority of people try and do it responsibly. Whether they have the hours to give people, to pay people, is to the individual organisation. Again, getting business working, getting full employment, will lessen that or it'll cease to exist. So it is all about the economy and getting it working again. Education, yes, we need to higher education, vocational and digital.
So the priorities of education I think neuroscience is teaching us that the first 3 years of life, and even antenatally, are crucially important. That's when 90% of brain growth occurs. And during that time, you've got 700 to 1,000 neuron pathways being laid down a second. So when a child starts at 5, there's already a massive gap, something like 3 million words extra spoken to some children versus others. So we need to make sure that parents have enough time to spend stimulating the children. The environments of very young children are very rich. And then in the older age groups, that the skills that our students are leaving school with actually help them find employment and fit with our economy, so that they have a useful role in society. With regards to the zero-hour contracts, as a GP, I see what tremendous stress this puts people under. I think one of the problems was when the employment legislation gave people full rights, and it made it very difficult to make people redundant after 6 months probationary period. I think this should have been longer, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why people are abusing 0 hours, because unless you're sure that your business can maintain that employment, you're going to opt for that first, and neither benefit. Obviously, unemployment doesn't help the economy, but it's a necessary evil.
Thank you. I'm strongly opposed to the abuse of 0 hours contracts. I've asked many questions in the States. I've seen how these things happen, that people sometimes have to do more than one job. They get no pays for holiday, no pays for sickness, and the uncertainty it creates, I think, is one of the factors in the difficulties of recovering Jersey's economy. Because how can you make decisions about your personal finance and family circumstances if you don't know what your income's going to be? So I'm really keen on our current Social Security Minister told us this was going to be looked at for legislation. There are circumstances when 0 hours contract is right, but I think it's the abuse in the circumstances if it's not right that we need to deal with. On this question of unemployment, well, of course, it doesn't help the economy, but the reality is we've gone through a dreadful recession and we're not out of it. I myself was made redundant in 2004. I know what it's like. I stood on the pavement and think, where's my job coming from? I spent 6 months working. Fortunately, I had cushioning of payoff, but I still felt that pain. I took on self-employment for 6 months, and of course then in the private sector I had a difficult job, upsetting, but I had to do it, of making people redundant myself when the work wasn't there. Because it was said before, if the business isn't there and there's no income and your choice of the business going under, my role was I had to find packages to make the pain better and find alternative accommodation. Education, it's about the workplace. And we've got a new education director, great opportunity for change there. Fully supported.
Thank you very much. The question about 0 hours contracts, this is, when I was Social Security Minister, I sort of brought in the first level of employment law. And I know from experience that getting that balance right of what is appropriate for the employer and what is appropriate for the employee is very critical to get that balance right. 0 hours contracts do have a place. They certainly are of benefit to the individual and also to the employer. But there are times when they have not been used correctly, and I accept that. And what I would say to anybody who is aware that they have not, then they're being abused in any sort of way, the Jersey Advisory and Conciliation Service are there to help them. So I would suggest that would be a way forward. With regard to education, education has to be one of our highest priorities going forward. It should be now, and it should be even more so going forward, because we need different skills now for the changing economy that we have within our island. We need to ensure that people coming through the education system have the right skills for the employers to be able to take up those people to work within the changing businesses. Developing an individual's potential has to be a high priority. The question has come from somebody who I know is very involved in special education needs. One of my children went through that system, and I know that the the ability of every child needs to be recognised, and they should be given every opportunity to reach their full potential. Sorry I didn't get to the other question.
Thank you. Janice, quite simply, unemployment doesn't help the economy, and believe it or not, the states don't have a policy to keep people unemployed. On the contrary, we have a policy to get people back to work, and that is working. And although there's still more to be done, our unemployment level has fortunately stabilised. I think it might have dropped slightly, but we need to ensure that we do more. And that's why I support economic growth, because economic growth, if carefully managed, benefits the whole community. And quite simply, it means it will create jobs and low unemployment, because it means, in simple terms, that with higher output, businesses tend to employ more workers. That's why we need some economic growth. If I can deal with the 0 hours contract, I think 0 hours contracts, some people love them, some people hate them, but they work well for both the employee and the employer most of the time. I'm not saying there is abuse, and we tend to be reactive as opposed to proactive in dealing with it. But the authorities do have the relevant powers to deal with it, but perhaps we could be more proactive in looking for it. And in terms of education, I think the most important thing is to ensure our teachers are properly resourced and looked after, because without the best teachers, our education system, well, I think we're as good as our worst teacher, let's put it that way. But I also think that... excuse me for 1 minute while I find it here. Yes, I think that I'm particularly keen to encourage schools to place more focus on character development, good citizenship, life skills, and the passing on of our own heritage and history. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. No, making people unemployed, yes, it's bad economics, but it does happen. You need to reskill people, but it often happens when industry gets more mechanised and people need different skills. I do have some thoughts on education and a proper technical college for youngsters who are practically oriented. I talk about that in my flyer. But I think one of the priorities is making sure that everyone leaving primary school can read and write. It costs $188,000 a year for remedial stuff at Highlands. 0 hours contracts, brilliant for things like the hospital nursing bank, where people want to do casual work, but we do have problems. One of the problems comes from the way our legislation is framed, the employment law, and it's causing difficulties for short-term contracts. Guernsey have a different approach, and I have, with and local employment lawyer, had discussions with Social Security and the minister there, and they are working on this actually to change the law to make to bring 0 hours contracts under control.
Thank you. No, unemployment does nothing for the economy. It is a necessary evil, but I'm pleased to hear that the co-op workers that are being made redundant are being offered other jobs, so that's some consolation. I do think the fear of unemployment encourages some businesses to take advantage of the workforce and offer 0 hours contracts, which if used inappropriately, and I was a supply teacher for many years and happy to do that under a 0 hours contract, but I know there are at least 100 trust company workers that are employed on 0 hours contracts. It means they can't get mortgages, they can't get leases, it leads to insecurity, and it is a really bad thing for our economy. If you're on a 0 hours contract, you are too afraid to spend, and the whole thing doesn't work. Now, in terms of education, I was a teacher for 38 years, and I could go on about this all night. I don't think we should get too hung up about skills, because in a changing economy, the best thing we can do is to give children the basic skills of reading, writing, maths, and after that, they need to be encouraged to learn how to learn. My English degree gave me a really good basis in assessing information, learning about culture, learning about people, distinguishing fact from opinion, and being able to communicate. So I think that's absolutely vital. You can read about my education policies in my leaflet. I believe strongly in putting teachers at the heart of education and taking their concerns into account before formulating any policy.
keeping people unemployed obviously does not help the economy at all. And in fact, the government of the island has been doing a great deal in recent years to try to bring down the number of those who are unemployed. 0 hours contracts are something that I'm afraid I do not know enough about. In theory, they should be of benefit to employers and employees because they give freedom to both to decide whether or not a particular offer of work should be taken up. So that if an employer has more work at a particular time and is able to give temporary work to employees, it gives the employer the opportunity to get that work done. And from the employee's point of view, there's no obligation to accept the offer of work, so that particularly for women with family obligations, if they are offered work and it's convenient to take it, they can do so. If it's not convenient, they cannot. But I certainly have heard from representatives of the immigrant communities that there is abuse of the 0 hours contract system. And I look forward to the work which is being done by the Social Security Department, and which I hope will see the light of day before long, to see whether there are controls that ought to be brought to bear on it.
Thank you for the question. No, unemployment clearly doesn't help the economy, and that's why we've been investing so much money, millions of pounds, during the course of this recession to ensure that we get people back into work, reskilled, retrained. Fantastic programme. The Back to Work team has done a great job at Social Security, Advance to Work. There's Advance to Work 2, Workwise, various incentives to employers to take on people. That investment is essential because it's so costly to have people out of work. I might add that it's costly for businesses too. It costs money to recruit, it costs money to train, and it's the last thing most businesses, most responsible businesses, want to do is to lose their staff. Sometimes, in order to survive and maintain the existing staff level, then they have to let people sadly go. But that's not what anybody wants to do. I'm pleased to say unemployment is dropping, and we've got to continue the hard work to bear down on it. This government, it's been about jobs, 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 getting people back into work. As far as education is concerned, we've got to move with the times. We've got to realise the needs and requirements of business and align our curriculum to be able to meet that. Children, for example, we teach them how to use computers. We should be teaching coding. Most kids know. I have a 4-year-old who knows how to use an iPad, knows more about it than I do. We've got to change and ensure that we provide the right skills for our industries. I'd like to see the review of education. I'd also like to see external schools inspectors brought back. I think that's important to get an external perspective. As far as 0-hour contracts are concerned, they're a necessary evil in some respects, but there is abuse, and abuse we must make sure we know more about and deal with it.
I would say education, education, education. I really believe it's fundamental to our society, education, education. I even give up a couple of hours a week from my professional job to go up and teach voluntarily in schools, and more professionals should do this, purely to keep certain children who feel they've lost out on the system, simply that they are worthwhile. I have difficulty at school, and people help me. Everybody has difficulty at some scale. I think it's very, very important that we invest in education and carry on revising it and revising it and revising it, both at the primary level, also at the tertiary level. We have a super university system. Senator Bailhache has worked very hard on the law side. I believe that should join with the accountancy side. We should create a faculty of law and accountancy in Jersey. We should aim for a combined Channel Island University of some kind, if we can afford it, obviously. There are many other things we can do in secondary education, and that is, for instance, in biology, we have a marvellous, the Durrell could supply half the teachers of biology, enormous expertise in the secondary education. The reason why many of us are made unemployed. We live in a very fast changing world, ladies and gentlemen. I have retrained about 4 times in my life. From a medical student, as a biologist, a research scientist, I was a teacher, and I'm now a qualified accountant, and I also work in compliance. So I've probably had more careers than anybody else in the room, and probably done more exams. And partly because I keep on going on about population. So, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, 0 hours
has to be a necessary evil sometimes. Thank you.
In answer to the first question, how does making people unemployed help the economy? I suppose in one sense you could argue that it helps the economy in the sense that it gives the states less of your money to potentially waste. Automation and other practices are taking jobs away from people. I mean, you can go to the supermarket and see an example of that with the self-scanning machines. You are essentially an off-the-books employee of the supermarket in that respect. Now, there are people that there's a recent example of JT where JT made a bunch of people unemployed. We said, well, we can't afford to keep these people. Yet the CEO is quite happy to walk home with £118,000 of a bonus on top of his salary. So there are some businesses out there that do abuse redundancies. There are businesses out there that abuse zero-hour contracts. A few of my friends have zero-hour contracts in the hospitality industry, and essentially they are slaves to their employer. They don't know when the money is coming in. They don't know when they're going to get work. They don't know if they have any family commitments, how to direct their lives around that. And there's a lot of uncertainty. Sometimes there is an element of freedom for the individual to sign on to a zero-hour contract. No one holds a gun to your head and makes you sign it. But at the same time, there is a lot of people out there who have been disenfranchised and have been made redundant, or who are long-term out of work, who are sort of roped in to fill these roles out of necessity. Talking about education, the best education system in the world is the Icelandic education system, and they recognise that you can't treat everyone the same. There's no cookie-cutter solution. You can't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the answer is simple. It doesn't help. And it's a very short-sighted solution. I myself was made redundant on a couple of occasions, and I can tell you it doesn't create any good. It brings your morale down, and it creates a sense of shame. And there's no one to talk to. And I think there should be some sort of subsidized scheme for people who are unemployed to create them, to help them to convert into and gain new skills to come back to employment ladder quickly and swiftly. And zero-hour contract, yes, this is necessary evil, as everyone said already. But if used in a considered manner, it can help people to come back to that employment ladder. And it's a choice that everyone takes, but it's a good choice sometimes. Thank you.
I find myself slightly at odds with some of the other candidates in regard to education. What would I do differently? Well, if we're going to solve the population problem, then we need to ensure that the people coming out of our schools and higher education have the skills that this island needs. And that's one of the biggest problems we face today. So I'd ask you a question, actually. Why is it that a 14-year-old disaffected young person suddenly thrives at 16 when they find themselves in vocational training? Surely that's telling us something. We've got it wrong. So we should be looking at youngsters that want to take the academic route at 14, give them the best education they can have. And youngsters that want to take the vocational route, be it electrician, plumber, builder, whatever, chef, that was my background, at 14, start training them at 14. Get them the real skills that they need. Education suddenly clicks. Oh, that's why I need maths. I've got to weigh this stuff. I've got to measure it. That's why I need English. I've got to write an order out. No, we wait till they're 16 and we take 3 years to develop 13 bricklayers. We've got a construction industry screaming for bricklayers, and we're going to have to bring them in from the UK or other countries because we can't develop our own. So I would do it very, very differently. 0 hours contracts has a place, but only a place for casual work, like my industry that I was in before. On a Saturday, when you've got a big wedding, that's where a 0 hour contract can work. Anything else, I think, is an abuse, and there should be a time limit on the number of hours, number of months a person can be employed full-time in 0 hours.
Okay, Janice, the unemployment figures for August were 1,510, so that's down. They are coming down. So that proves that back-to-work schemes and things like that are having an impact. However, we've seen how fragile that can be with that wobble with the co-op, with those people potentially losing their jobs. In relation to the education system, what does the education system need to do? It needs to prepare young people for jobs that don't even exist yet. Now, if you spin back 10 years and created a job called a social media administrator, nobody would know what that meant because it didn't exist. Now there are plenty of people who tweet and Facebook in a corporate way, and that is a legitimate job. So what the education system needs to do is have the vision to look for what people are going to need, what skills they will need to fulfill those jobs that are up and coming in the future, those type of skills. 0 hours contracts, there is another way, is variable hours contracts. And what variable hours contracts do is they give an employee a guaranteed number of hours per week or per month. Now, we see plenty of people who are on 0 hours contracts and don't even realise that they're employees with all the rights that come with being an employee. So what we really need for 0 hours contracts is a set of guidelines so that employers could make sure they're using them correctly, and employees could see that if they're on a 0 hours contract, that is being applied correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with the 0 hours contracts in light of what Malcolm's just said, and that's exactly what the Social Security Department, together with the Central Social Policy Unit in my department, is doing, because they are being abused, and it's not right. They should be for mutual benefit of employer and employee. And another thing is that needs to change is there shouldn't be exclusivity conditions within those contracts either. That needs to change. Education. Vocational, apprenticeships, absolutely. Each child meeting its full potential. But there's got to be some changes in our education system. We've got to focus on standards. We've got to make sure that the curriculum is focused on our economy, as Andrew said, and focused on our culture and focused on our history. It's not right that we just import it from somewhere else and then our young people don't understand what makes Jersey the place that it is. They don't understand about our history and they have no knowledge of our culture, and they're being equipped for jobs which aren't even in our economy. Yes, they might come in future. So we've got to do some really quite radical thinking about that. We've got to give the state schools more independence. We've got to make sure that when we've got children who are struggling at school, we're not just working with the children, but we're working with the families. I think that's probably it. Thank you.
Well, you heard it first from Chris Magee. If you want to support your local supermarket workers, insist on a cashier and boycott the scanners. That's the first move. A lot of people I know work on 0 hours contracts. I know the issues, but if you talk to them, they prefer to take the abuse as long as they can take the money. But we've just heard an entirely sensible solution, in my view, and I'm glad to hear that actually Social Security are looking into this. Priorities for the education service. Well, I'd like some clarification. For years, I've understood that education services here compare extremely favourably with education in the United Kingdom. Until recently, though, we discover that education in the United Kingdom fares rather badly compared with the rest of Europe. And it's somewhere down in the lower top 20 league. I think we need to look into this, frankly, as a matter of urgency and find out whether we need to change direction on education or not. But I would say one further thing on education that's a little radical. I do think that we could expand the envelope in the morning for taking children to school and start classes perhaps half an hour or 45 minutes later, thereby, at a stroke, hopefully relieving the ghastly traffic congestion that we put up with every term time that miraculously goes away in the holidays. I want to engineer permanent holiday situation for traffic.
I'll deal with the 0 hours system contract system, or the 0 hour contracts first. It is cause and effect. When you have a recession, when you have unemployment, when you have pressure on an economy, you have pressure on business, you have pressure on service industries, and unfortunately it is part of that. As Ian has inferred and Malcolm has referred to us also, there are ways of dealing with it, but when the bottom falls out of the world economy, as it did in 2007, that is part of the consequences. With regard to people being unemployed, unemployment is caused by a number of complex reasons: recession, rationalisation, poorly run businesses, and all sorts of different. But the knock-on effect is depression, loneliness, homelessness, all sorts of things. So the priority is to get people back to work. But unemployment is caused by a number of complex issues, and I can't get into that in 30 seconds. Finally, education. My own view, the question was priority for education. So my view would be to reinforce the state sector, primary and secondary. I agree with some of what's been said tonight. I don't believe that the English system, primary and secondary, is a role model. I think the French system is much higher. I like the baccalaureate system. And I do like, I'm the product of a Jesuit education in Ireland. I do believe that the Irish system is held up in the top 10, as has France, and has some of the Scandinavian countries, and I would tend to do that. So, thank you.
I'll take the answers in reverse order. My late mother was a teacher at Grouville School. My twin is a teacher, and my partner is a teacher, so I live in a education world. There are three priorities, and it is, in my view, the big issues it's the big issue for the next Council of Ministers. Dr. Cameron, if I may say, was absolutely right. The first 1,001 days from conception to 2 years is vital. And in my manifesto, which we can't always do justice within 30 seconds per answer, is in my manifesto. I want all candidates to sign up to the 1,001-day manifesto. I know the Chief Minister agrees with it. In terms of, we also need to raise standards. They're not good enough. We're putting money in. I'm prepared to put more money in, but we're not actually getting the standards. And thirdly, we need to ensure that no person in Jersey is prevented from getting the further education that they want. Clearly, there's an issue of student finance. Employment. We've brought the headline rate of employment. It would be over 3,000 if we wouldn't have done some of the spending that some candidates have said. And the Chief Minister has led that with Social Security and others. 0 hours contracts. I think I probably had one when I did piecework for my father, doing tomatoes and doing potatoes. They are abused. They do, however, have advantages. They give employers flexibility, particularly small businesses. They actually allow individuals to boost their earnings. But you mustn't have restricted clauses, like banning people from taking others. And all the other candidates, I agree with what they're saying. Thank you very much.
Well, there we are, everybody. We've gone past the magic hour of 9:30, so I think it's time to start winding up proceedings. I think we've learnt some of the views and the beliefs, the aims and the worries and concerns of the candidates here tonight. And Anthony, I think you're on to something. Keep going. Can I take this opportunity to remind everybody that polling day is Wednesday, the 15th of October 2014. Opportunities are available if you wish to pre-poll and postal vote. Please contact the parish hall or your parish hall if you have any queries. The next hustings is tomorrow night at 7:30 in the parish of St Clement at their parish hall. I would just like to thank our parish hall staff for setting up the hall this evening. I think they've done wonderfully well and made it work very efficiently.